The Order is a new crime thriller that was just released in select theaters over the last few days. Can't remember if this one's going to be streaming on Netflix or not, but either way, it's directed by a guy named Justin Kurzel. It also stars Jude Law and Nicholas Hoult and Journey Smollett. So this is a story that's based on real-life events. It takes place back in the 1980s. It follows a war-weary and kind of a burned-out detective who works for the FBI, played by Jude Law. In Idaho, he stumbles upon a series of heists that continue to escalate. He finds out that the people perpetrating these heists are white supremacists, and so it's essentially a movie about the FBI going up against this white supremacist group who is staging all of these heists because they're building towards a gigantic terrorist attack, and the FBI has to figure out a way to stop them. I gotta say, it's kind of a culture shock in a lot of ways, seeing somebody like Jude Law with an American accent. That's like the one thing that I was not prepared for in here. It was kind of a jump scare. Like, he showed up in the movie and I was expecting him to sound like British, because that's how he always sounds, and then he sounded American, and I was just like, oh yeah, right, actors, they do this thing called acting. That makes sense. We all know Jude Law, we know his track record, we know what comes with him. What I will say though is that his performance is absolutely one of the best things about this movie. Acting in general is strong all the way around. Nicholas Hoult also gives maybe one of my favorite performances of the year. Nicholas Hoult is playing the leader of this white supremacist terrorist cell, and so their dynamic, their conflict is essentially at the heart of the movie. This is a movie that also feels very deliberate. It's not a movie that I could necessarily classify as a slow burn, which is to say that's one of the best things about the movie, is that it's well acted and it's well paced. It's one of those movies that feels deliberate in what it's trying to do. Some might even call it methodical in its approach, but it's not a movie that feels slow. There's always something happening that's advancing the plot and pushing it forward. A movie that has tension, it has some action set pieces and some violent things that happen. Ultimately, it's about the fight against racism, the fight against corruption, and how the FBI in the 1980s was apparently at the very heart of that struggle in this little town in Idaho. There are heavy hell or high water or Wind River vibes with this movie in terms of the aesthetic and the pacing and everything about it. I kind of want to look up to see if it was written by Taylor Sheridan, because it feels like one of those movies that was definitely written by Taylor Sheridan. Maybe he produced it. I don't know. It just feels like a Taylor Sheridan type of movie. In that sense, the movie feels grounded. It feels gritty. It feels country. It feels desolate. There's a lot of real world references that you can find in a movie like this. I don't find the movie to be overly preachy, but there's just a few things that stand out if you want to pay attention during a movie like this. The movie is tense and heavy, and I do feel like the cinematography lends a lot to that for a movie like this. There's a lot of beautiful wide takes and great establishing shots in a movie like this that establish the countryside and the surrounding areas. The environment here and the aesthetic is really what takes this movie beyond what would be a pretty by-the-numbers thriller on its own. That plus the performances are probably what elevate this movie beyond that, and I gotta say, it is one of those movies that kind of surprised me. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Now that I've seen it, I'm really happy that I got myself into it. We'll say if you're expecting a movie that's going to redefine the wheel, or if it's going to present you with something new, innovative, or exciting, that's not really the type of movie this is. There is something a little bit formulaic about this movie's approach and how it lays out this script and how it executes its story. Some people are going to call this movie by the numbers, paint by numbers, or whatever the case may be. It's one of those type of stories, and I can't say that I disagree with the sentiment. This movie follows a path and a pattern that you've seen before. You've seen it in better movies, but it does execute it very well. If you're looking for something a little bit more interesting or new, you're probably going to be a little bit let down by this movie. I did mention earlier that the performances of Jude Law and Nicholas Hoult are really what tie this whole thing together. One of the disappointing things about the movie is that we did not get their character dynamic on screen as much as I think we should have. The unstoppable force meets the immovable object. When they're on screen together, you can just feel the energy crackling. I didn't get enough of those type of scenes in my opinion, and I do feel like it could have added something to the movie overall. Journey Smollett, God bless her. I mean, she plays an FBI agent in the movie. She's really good, and I enjoyed seeing her in the movie. Granted, she's Journey Smollett, so I enjoy seeing her anyways, like regardless of what she's doing in the movie, because my God, that woman is just a treasure to look at. Some of the character work is fine and functional, but there could have been a little bit more. That's all I'm saying. In the end, this movie is tense and it's heavy and it's well acted and extremely well executed. It's a very simple premise and a very simple formula that you've seen before, but I like crime thrillers like this. I like crime dramas like this that connect to real world stuff and remind us that there's still a war that we're fighting out here. The Order was one of the more enjoyable crime thrillers I've seen this year. I'm gonna leave this one in the Silver Age for Man of Steel. Tell me, are you excited to see Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor in the new DC universe coming out next year? here, go ahead and let me know in the comment section down below, or tell me what your favorite Luthor is. Please like and subscribe to the Superfan Show. Stay tuned for more videos, and if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.